In 2017, the employees of the ski of a resort in the Swiss Alps discovered, in the ice, a discovery that amazed everyone, however. This mystical story began, 70 years earlier in August 1942, husband and wife by the surname Dumas Lin gone, in his village to milk cows or wherever. The grazing animal was high up in the Alpine mountains back home. The spouses, the Malin, never came back to for 70 years. No one knew that happened. A couple were left in the dark, their siblings and 7 children. In only 2017, the year the employees of the ski resort discovered in the ice a well-preserved the body. The police arrived on the scene quickly, found that the clothing and personal effects, the years of the last century, are even preserved, documents on which we were able to identify the bodies from the preliminary versions during the camping trip of the spouses of Timolen, have fallen into a crevasse for 70 years. Snow and ice prevented us from finding missing due to global warming. Some of the tender and icy cover has come off because of this. The bodies were finally, children of the spouses are found and diminished, who, by 2017, were already, more than 70 years, confessed that for them an important event over the course of many decades. They never stopped looking for parents and can now finally experience peace. 430,000 years ago in Antarctica fell a huge meteorite. Was then still wanted mammoths, and the territory of Europe began to be inhabited by Neanderthals. In our scientists are just beginning to study the fragments of this huge meteorite and are preparing for a lot of discoveries because the scale of the space object was just huge. You remember Chelyabinsk meteorite that fell in 2013. If you remember something like this, please like this event then. Because of the meteorite fall, suffered more than 1,000 people in mostly because of broken windows. The rest got off lightly, so if one had fallen on Chelyabinsk, the same meteorite that landed in Antarctica 430,000 years ago, then there's just nothing left for you to do. In general, researchers believe over the Arctic an ideal place to study meteorites, thanks to the complete absence of man and perfect white surface up arms, objects fallen from space much easier. And because of the very low temperature, the shrapnel, tens and hundreds are perfectly preserved. 1,000 years in 1996, researchers from the NASA has discovered a Martian meteorite, which they estimate may contain traces of ancient living organisms from the red planet. According to scientists' estimates, the age of the meteorite was 4 billion years later. Several decades later, research hypothesis of living organisms. Unfortunately, it is not confirmed, but considering the fact that a rough estimate of the number of meteorites in Antarctica 300,000, and most of them have not yet researched by scientists, can wait many unexpected surprises. Looking at these pictures, it is impossible to believe that it's not Photoshop mined from completely covered with ice on the lake. There is no ice around like this. Amazing. The phenomenon occurred a few years ago at the island of Michigan. This was the consequence of coincidence of weather conditions. Unexpectedly, a sudden cold snap and strong winds, which caused the waves to be swept away sharply. Gusts straight to the lighthouse. As a result of for some time the entire structure was covered with ice, and it became like a castle made of the tail. At this very moment he had time to be captured by a photographer shortly thereafter. The ice has melted and the building has acquired its familiar site in the mid-80s of the last century on the Isle of Sheldon, which a skull was found in Antarctica, unusual form. In the course of the scientists' study, it was possible to find out that this skull refers to a man who lived in the early 19th centuries in Chile, as a man from the south, U.S. side was in the Antarctica at the beginning of the 19th century. First there, investigators suggested that it was possible, is one of the seal hunters who came to these places to fish. However, it quickly became clear that the skull belongs to a woman. There is no mention of that among seal hunters of that time were women, and the shape of the found of the skull only adds to the mystery of this finds and appears to be the owner of of this skull was the principal of one of the first people to visit the continent, Antarctica, in 2016. It was discovered in Antarctica. The pyramid in the pictures showed flat forms that indicated that it was a case of human hands when we talk about pyramids who in the first through represent the Egyptian pyramids or Mayan pyramids. However, the discovery of a similar object in Antarctica allowed would talk about what we need to. The continent was once a vanished civilization. This discovery could forever to turn scientists' perceptions of the history of the continent, but so far researchers and experts are not in a hurry to bold conclusions. They lean toward the version that it is all a natural process that the man has nothing to do with. Examples of such erosion on the planet. Quite a lot of this kind of even and formations may have formed because of the effects of ice and rocks for thousands of years. The most striking example of such erosion is the famous Mt. The Matterhorn of their Swiss and flat shape. Many people have seen it, including thanks to that it was from the Matterhorn that the logo of the famous Toblerone chocolates. By the way, write in the comments if you believe into the theory that in order to build the pyramids in Egypt or Peru, ancient people have enlisted the help of alien civilizations, or still consider it not. The more the conspiracy theory. Looking at this photo, you can at first to think that the man just picked up the ground, some kind of stick, but in fact this man professor at Colorado University, in the U.S. And he's holding an ancient weapon, which is more than 10,000 years old at the time the giant dart was part of the weapon in the cup was in the hands of the warrior, dart and then warrior metal it to achieve the goal through such the design of the dart could develop tremendous speed and hit the prey at an impressive distance. This dart was found thanks to melted at to a glacier on top of one of the mountains in the park, Yellowstone in the USA. It belonged to the indigenous Indians who inhabited this area at the time. Territory. Most people know what they looked like. Mammoths are a huge creature resembling elephants with huge tusks and hair, but not everyone is aware that at the same time there were creatures walking around the planet that resembled modern rhinoceroses this way, called woolly rhinoceroses, animal who walked side by side with mammoths and died out around the same time, tens of thousands of years ago. Today, archaeologists managed to find the remains of these animals largely due to melting glaciers, which are opening up more and more secrets of the past. The Loch Ness Monster from Antarctica. All know the famous mythical monster, which can inhabit the Scottish Loch Ness Lake. And if the idea of the existence of this monster, most scholars refer to skeptical that the huge monster of Antarctica who lived many years ago. It is a proven fact. 1989, near the island of Seymour, which is located in Antarctica, paleontologists have found the remains of an enormous creatures with incredibly long necks. For a long time they argued about who belonged to the bones found. To get all the remains from the researchers took, for more than 20 years, they have raised over 800 kilograms of ancient monster bones. It was only after that scientists were able to, should be described. They called it the Loch Ness Monster from Antarctica. Turned out to be the biggest diamond in, at least of those found to date. This floating monster was more 10 meters long. Representatives of this the genus has been extinct for several dozen millions of years ago. You were most likely Mazza VR and could eat, including sharks. This finding gives reason to believe that in Antarctica at one time there were unbelievable creatures, or perhaps, and still dwells to this day. Thanks to the melting of the glaciers caused by the global warming in the Norwegian mountains, scientists are discovering more and more details of Viking life in this territory, several thousand years ago. Among the finds, the vast array of items that are able to tell us in detail about life. Vikings are various tools of the household, utensils, and even a piece of clothing. All the finds are perfectly preserved because have spent all these years chained by the wolves. Also, for the mystery of glaciers in Alaska, researchers stumbled upon an entire forest which has spent more than 1,000 years in the ice. This place is called Mendenhall Sprue. Scientists have noticed traces of the showing of from under the ice of the trees a few more decades ago, but only now, it becomes clear that, unlike other similar forests that have been covered by a glacier for thousands of years, this, preserved in excellent condition, full and trees that are not broken, and is still in a vertical. What other discoveries are waiting for scientists in this forest when the ice cover will diminish even more? The only thing left to do is to guessing. Sometimes scientists are not only interested in what hiding in the ice and the ice itself. Researchers estimate that Antarctica has lions that range in age from 800,000 to 1.5 million years, which means that you began to form back then, when mammoths walked the planet, and woolly rhinoceroses. Also among the ice of Antarctica there are the famous Bloody Glacier, but don't to be frightened. In spite of its bright red, the color of the blood has nothing to do with this glacier do not have due to small cracks in the ice outwardly penetrates the water-rich iron, and it is this element that gives the water is such a bright red color, and for subglacial lake iron saturation responds to a microorganism that keeps you alive and gets the necessary nutrients despite the fact that is under a huge layer of ice. This gives scientists reason to believe that under ice caps on planets such as Mars and others can preserve life. By the way, red is not the only one, an amazing hue that can possess natural ice. What about of green ice of exactly that color? Iceberg was discovered by scientists in Antarctica. According to their estimates, in this case, the cause is the presence of iron oxide. And such an iceberg can work. How the delivery service deviated from Antarctica, it will sail far into the ocean, preserving the same iron oxide, which will become the power source for pontoons far from Antarctica itself. Don't forget to like it if you were interested in this video. Also subscribe to the channel and click on the bell to keep up to date with new videos, and, of course, leave your comments under this video.